and welcome to this week's episode of Tired and Thriving, a podcast that recognizes just how tired and exhausted we all are while discussing ways to still thrive. Whether it's something big like setting up a whole spa experience for yourself or something small like taking a sip of water throughout the day, we're here to help each other thrive. I'm your host, Samantha Gray, and this week's guest is Cassie Soliday. Cassie is a writer and cartoonist who works in the animation industry. She is also a fellow podcaster who leads the charge with the Ink and Paint Folk podcast, as well as starting out a new collaborative podcast called The Story Reaper. Thank you so much for being here with me, Cassie.
Thanks for having me. It's so cool that you mentioned Story Reaper.
I know. I saw you post it and I was like, ooh, let me put that in real fast.
It's like my whole life right now.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It's so good. And the team is just killing it. Like, so proud.
Oh, can't wait to talk about it. Is there anything I missed that you're currently working on or that you want to mention?
I mean, so I have like a scattered brain, so I work on a lot of things all at once, but not necessarily things that like are out in the world. Because my cartoons, like I make a lot of comics, but I don't post them. So I'm working through posting those more, or thinking about posting them more. You know, there's the part where you're thinking about it, and then there's the part that you're doing, and I'm somewhere in between. So yeah.
I know. I was looking through your Instagram and I noticed that you posted a lot of like you did kind of like a daily comic. And was that to get through the pandemic or?
No, that was 2017. And that was
okay.
I did it for a
year.
year.
2020.
Yeah, but
really?
I think I only posted about 6 months, and then it kind of fell off because like what I was doing like really crappy like scribbles and then redoing them nicer to post. And so things got a little crazy at work from what I remember, and also my dad was really sick at the time, so like I have a lot of family illnesses that have gone on over the years that have like kind of derailed me. So, or derailed my productivity, not derailed me, like life continues. But yeah, so sometimes you're thriving and then being super productive. And sometimes you have to like, there's no other choice but to kind of like slow down, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to your comics in a minute, but let's start with what got you interested in writing for animation and what was your path into getting your first job in the industry?
So I feel like, okay, so in the 90s, like I loved cartoons. I loved cartoons the whole time, but like Nightmare Before Christmas, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, like this, like it looks like one person, like their thumbprint over everything. Like everything looked like it was filtered through the same like point of view and the same like vision. And I thought that was so cool that someone's like art style could like take over a whole feature, you know? And I knew then that I wanted to pursue art, and I loved animation, but I hadn't connected the two. I was like 5, like I had no idea. And then when I saw Toy Story, I was like, holy cow, like toys coming to life. I have toys in my room. And so that's when I was like, you know what? I like animation storytelling. So from around that point, I was like, I'm going to be a writer and I'm going to do art. And I hadn't connected them. So like a big thread through my life has been like art or writing. And, you know, I've gotten some bad advice in the past that I was like, you got to focus. And then I see all these amazing like storyboard artists who write and draw. And I'm like, why only them? Why not me? So like, you know, I've kind of like had conflict in my brain, only in my brain about this. But I'm from a small Midwestern town off the Ohio River. And my parents had gotten a divorce, and I had moved with my mom to outside Chicago. So I went to school in Chicago for animation. And specifically, I wanted to do hand-drawn animation, even though the two movies that inspired me as a kid were not hand-drawn. And, you know, they were like, if you want to, you know, put food on the table and a roof over your head, you should get into CG. But I don't know. The rendering times, I was like, I don't even know what to do with myself. And then when it came out wrong, I was like, I don't have the patience for this. So apparently I had the patience to draw, but not to sit at a computer and stare at it all day, which we
Yes.
kind of do now, like drawing straight into the computer. But anyway, so I was like, animate, hand drawn is it. Didn't really find a lot of work after college in hand drawn. But at the same time, when I was going to school, I was also studying improv and comedy at Chicago,
Mm.
their Second City and Annoyance theaters. And a lot of workshops that improvisers had around town. Like it was my whole life for like 2 whole years was just like improv and sketch comedy, and I actually really miss it, especially in Chicago because like out here in LA, it feels like it's another tool in the actor's
Mhm.
tool belt. And in Chicago, they just did it for the pure joy of it. Like, obviously, there were people who
Oh.
hope to be on SNL someday or like on the Second City main stage, which is like the only real paid opportunity in town for comedy. But like, uh, I feel like I'm digressing. But like, I loved it so much, and I was like, I really like I never thought I was funny, and I had like crippling shyness. So like comedy really helped me get out of my comfort zone, and
Mhm.
like I feel like I really I'm sorry. Just missing it.
No.
Anyways, yeah, so I was like,
You're, like,
okay, well
having nice
maybe
memories right now.
yeah, it's
You're
like
like
maybe I should move back to Chicago, a decade later, be like the oldest person over there. No, there's plenty of older people in in comedy, but it's a lot of 20-year-olds too. So anyways, I was like, how can I bridge comedy writing and animation? And it was just like, writing for animation. Like pretty much all of animated projects have humor in them. Like usually they're comedy forward even.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's what I'm gonna go for. And I ended up getting an internship at Nickelodeon, and it was really great. And I found out that I'm pretty intense as well during this internship. Like I think I weirded some people out. I was just like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed in the worst way. But I learned a lot and got to see like all the different roles. And like they let me sit in the writer's room at one point, and that was really cool. And I also got to like shadow the art director and saw like how he painted a color card, and I was like, I don't understand. It's just I don't know. It was just the coolest. But after the internship, I ended up working at Disneyland down in Anaheim. And my
Mhm.
theory was like, okay, well, it was expensive just to move out here. Number one, let me stay out here because I think that's going to be the best way to get into the industry instead of being all the way in the Midwest. And so I worked down there as a hostess in Disney California Adventure, and
Mhm.
eventually got to be a sketch artist in Off the Page, which was the delight of my life. I loved it so much, and it was
Oh.
basically because like we got to design like sketches that we would like replicate for customers. So it was a lot of replication, and like we got teased for tracing all the time, but like
Oh my
there's just
god.
too many people coming into like at like and like no over 500 different drawings that we can do for someone, so like you
Yeah.
got to streamline that shit, come on. So but it was fun, and it felt like I had this like very rare opportunity to kind of live out my hand drawn animation like dream, because it felt
Yeah.
like I was just cleaning up the master's work. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people had already designed things ahead of me getting there, and like people at the animation feature studios, like we were just like recreating their work and dissecting, because the unhand the underdrawing of like what we end up seeing on screen, like the foundations, like the shapes that make up the character design, I got to
Yeah.
do that. So it was really cool, and I really
Oh.
loved it. And of course, get to roam around Disneyland after work every day was really fun too. Wow, this answer is really winding to your question.
No,
But
I love it. There's like because there's a lot of elements that go into like how you get in, and I think there's a lot of misconception, or even people are just like they skip all of this to just be like, yeah, I did, something else for all these years, and then I like just like got in, or this person let me in, or all these things. But it's so helpful to know these aspects where it's like, hey, you know what, this aspect of not being in the industry helped you with like you said, you got to fulfill, like doing this part got to help you fulfill the hand drawn thing or aspect that you've always wanted to do.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, hey, you may not hit exactly the goal you're at right now, but if you're crossing something off your list, like that's amazing in your journey.
Yeah, and it also, like, I had this itch for animation history, like, and I got to learn a lot because
Mm,
people, because we would draw all this stuff in front of people and they could talk to us, and so we got to share our love of animation and Disney history with everyone, and then, like, I feel like animation history is, like, very strongly tied to Disney animation history in particular because they just
yes.
had so many innovations along the way. It's not the only thing, obviously, but, like, I feel like they influenced the industry so much in good ways and bad ways. But we
Yeah.
always focused on the good when when talking to guests. So yeah, it was cool. But obviously, I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible at the same time.
Hmm.
And I took workshops in Burbank and online to like improve my art, improve my writing. Again, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to bridge the two or if I was going to be able to, but I got an opportunity to go in as a production coordinator on Fresh Beat Band of Spies. And like interviewing
Ooh.
for these things were so funny because you'd interview one person for a PA job and they're like, I think you have too much experience. Cause I also had some PA gigs from the Midwest on like music videos and commercials. But also there'd be people like, oh, you don't have enough experience. And so I'm like, oh, this is so confusing. But the person who thought I was overqualified for the PA position, she was such a doll and like recommended me to a friend who was producing on Fresh Beat and needed a coordinator. So I got my opportunity that way. And it was really neat. And it was kind of an interesting production because all the boards in animation, like all of that was done in Canada, but we had the
Mm,
supervisors and the design team in Glendale. So
yeah.
that was my first time really seeing that because I thought, oh, storyboard artist jobs are safe. They're
Hmm.
like, they'll continue to be in LA. And then I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. But also, what I've learned is that, like, it's collaboration and there's like great artists all around the globe too. So,
There is talent out there. It's talented people, like you said, all around the world. And if we can only figure out a way to like obviously, and this even changes once the pandemic happened, because now people are like, well, we don't have to stay here, but how can we keep having the same benefits and not be taken advantage of that,
definitely.
like can apply everywhere. um so it's something we still need to figure out, but I think it's something worth like either talking about or even I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
um
No, I definitely agree with that. And, I've thought about we call them service studios because they're usually making like, our shows and everything. But it's like, of course, they want to make their own shows too. And some of them do. Like they balance between original content that they find networks to put on and also like servicing other shows. But I've moderated a few events for women in animation, and there's some really cool animation happening in other countries, and like they should be able to create their own shows as well. But like, also, do we see it as Americans? Like, does it broadcast on our services? Like, I feel like there's so much out there that we don't get to see, like we don't have access to. And I wish it was just like one platform with all animation around the world that we could enjoy.
yeah. Ooh, well, like we're putting it out there.
Someone make it. Jeff Bezos, do something good for the world.
Oh god, no, I wouldn't want to rely on Jeff Bezos, but we should get some
It was like the
other
first millionaire that came to mind. I felt so bad.
well, we're like, who in animation who is an exec or like an animation fan who has the
Hmm.
millions to like
Does
invest in this platform?
Yeah,
If
does
you're
anyone in
listening.
animation have money? Yeah.
Well, obviously they had to be from the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's interesting out there. Oh, but okay, so you um got this job that was half skeleton studio, half like in-house.
It was
And
such a small team on our side.
yeah. Yeah. And so that was like kind of you're coming back in and then staying into the PA job.
It was a coordinator job, but it was
Oh,
kind of
coordinator.
like to pick up the stuff that the other coordinators couldn't fit in because they were
Mm-hmm.
just so busy. So I was kind
Yeah.
of what, you might consider a floater, except everyone was on every episode. We didn't like do the back and forth episode thing. Like the design supervisor had a PA, and well, I guess they were a coordinator too, and then it was me. So just like three people on the support staff aside the assistant or the associate producer and the producer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't been on a show that did it that way since then, but yeah, it was very small and it really trucked away.
Yeah. And then what led you into a writing job?
Right, right. So after that, I was a production coordinator on the 7D at Disney TV, and they were very like, "You're so good at production, you should stay in production." And so,
Of
like when the
course.
thing wrapped up, I could have been a production coordinator on a new show, and like I really wanted to work with the team, and they like the show. It turned out hilarious, and I'm like sad I didn't work on it, but I'm also glad I took the risk, and I went to another show, Puppy Dog Pals, as a story coordinator,
Mm-hmm.
and but I was very upfront, like I want to be a writer, so if the script coordinator comes open, the position comes open, I would love to be considered. And so they're like, okay, cool, so story coordinator storyboard coordinator will be great for you because you'll get to be part of the story conversations. And I was like, yes. That's very true. And for a while I thought it wasn't going to happen. It was like just like 7 months in, and I'm like, it's never going to happen. The script coordinator is going to stay here forever. Those like very dramatic things, like you're so close to something and then it feels so far away. I was so
Mm-hmm.
dramatic. I'm still very dramatic, but um luckily the script coordinator position came open. She had gotten promoted to staff writer, which was so great and so deserved. And so second season I was a script coordinator for about a season and a half before getting the opportunity to be a staff writer. And I had freelanced a couple scripts, and as a script coordinator I got to be in the room when they were like breaking stories and taking notes on everything, so I learned a lot from the team. The team was so great. But that's how I got into writing.
Well, that's great. What did you work on as an intern at
Oh,
Nickelodeon?
Fanboy and Chum Chum, which was like my number one choice. When
Oh.
they were like, "What are the shows that you'd like to intern on?" I was like, "The Mighty Bee and Fanboy and Chum Chum," and they're like, "Well, the Mighty Bee isn't in production anymore," and so like, so I was very lucky to get like my top in production choice, and it's such a goofy show, and I feel like it didn't get all the love it deserved because it's so weird.
Yeah, I always I feel like what is it? The Cartoon Network lineup. When I think of Courage the Cowardly Dog and the stuff they had out at that time, I'm like, that's probably the weirdest I've seen on mainstream television. Like
Hmm.
that was
That is
popular.
a weird one.
Yeah, I loved it though. I was
I
like,
love
yes.
the memes that have like returned from the dead for that show. It's pretty great.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I've seen a couple and I was like, oh, I'm so glad people are talking about courage again. But then it like
Yeah.
only happened a couple times and then it hasn't really showed up on my feed anymore.
Yeah, I feel like they took so many more risks in the 90s.
Early 2090s for sure.
Hmm.
And then that dang recession hit. And then everybody
Yeah.
was like, no more risks.
IP only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah. We won't even get into that. Um, In what way has your career made you thrive, and in what ways has it made you tired?
Well, I've been tired the whole time, but I definitely get tired the more experience I get and the more BS that we have to deal with in the industry.
Yes.
And I'm sure, like, from every side, there's BS to be dealt with. But what was the question again? I'm sorry.
So you've mentioned how you've been tired.
Yeah.
How do you thrive from all of that?
Hmm. Well, I think just getting to be in the industry, like I look at it as like, I'm so lucky to have done this. Like I'm good. Like, I felt that way when I was in college. I'm like, I got my degree and I got to freelance on a little thing. Oh my God, I did it. I did my dream. Now, what else can I do? Because I feel like if I never get to do anything else, then it'll be like always like wanting wanting more and not being satisfied. So I try to be like, man, I've accomplished so much already. And so that helps me thrive most of the time. So it's like I'm already like kicking ass because I've achieved everything I dreamed of. And the other thing that like has been a little depressing though is that like, my goal was to be a staff writer. Ah, awesome. I did it. And then you roll off the show and you're like, oh, I gotta like kind of break in all over again. And so like
Yeah.
every job I get, I'm like, I feel like I'm still starting out at like year one here. And so
Yes.
like that's the tiring part, I think. Because if the system had worked where like studios were making shows and they were just consistently like rolling you onto a new project, hopefully, or like at least within the same year, like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it'd be less tiring. um but I don't know, because I don't know what that world would feel like,
Yeah.
because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So I think that the times between like my writing gigs has been very helpful for development of my own ideas. And so like in a way it's given me more reason to believe that I have a point of view and something to say and like and things to create. And I do like having that time to be able to put things together, because even if I can't sell it as a show into development, or if it gets cut off when it's in development, can still take it into some other format or go around and pitch it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it just made me really believe in myself as a creator, first and foremost, especially when like it's just this industry is so confusing because like they're like, we really want creators, creator driven stuff, and you go pitch stuff, they're like, well, we're really focusing on IP right now. And it's like you're always hearing the opposite after you do what is suggested. And
Yeah.
so or like, I've been in the industry over like, about 10 years now, and then be like, oh, you don't have enough experience for what we're looking for. And it gets so confusing. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can really like, so one of the things that has helped me thrive lately is very surface level stoicism. I like have a page up on my phone on a web browser. It's just like the 9 rules of stoicism, and one of them is just like focus on only what you have control over. I'm chopping
Mm-hmm.
this up, but I don't do deep dive into it. But like that one rule is like, yeah, what can I control? I need to focus on that, because you'll never be able to control anyone else.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah, that's really
creating
hard.
things.
It's I mean, okay, what was it called again? Like
I don't even
the
know if I'm
9
saying it
rules?
right. Is how much of a amateur I am
Well,
here. But
I'll
stoicism,
ask you about it later. Stoicism?
okay. Yeah, stoicism. I don't know. But it's like Marcus Aurelius kind of stuff. I was gonna name other people and I can't think of their names.
I'm gonna look it up real fast, actually,
Okay.
because I think that's like really useful to know. Um, the 9 rules.
Yeah, something like that. Um 12 rules.
Oh, 12 rules.
Oh wait, no, this is just some guy's version of it.
Okay, we'll talk about this later.
Okay. But kind of like from what I remember is like, accept what you can and cannot, accept your fate, accept that you'll die someday. And it's all just like very blanket matter of fact stuff, and like it could be sad, but also if you just like know that it's going to happen, it's like, okay. I don't know, everything else feels kind of small,
Yeah.
especially when you think about you're going to die someday. That one always gets me. I'm like, yeah, okay, none of this really matters. I feel a lot better
Yeah.
actually.
I mean, that is like a common what is it? like advice, or whenever people go to older, like people in their like 80s, or somebody who is about to reach death, like naturally, and they're like, what do you wish you knew when you like what advice do you give to younger people? And it's always like, I wish I didn't worry as much. Like, about life. I
Totally.
wish I just went for things, or like wasn't as afraid. And then here we are being like, I'm anxious, I have depression, I don't know what's happening. Like,
Mhm. Yeah. I feel like there's been 'cause I really do love the TikToks where they're like people are interviewing like their grandparents and stuff. And like I remember this one where the I think it was a grandpa and they were like 90 years old. Like, what was the biggest surprise in your life? And he's like, well, I thought I'd be dead by 70 and here I am at 90. And so like to be like getting older, be like, man, I'm gonna kick the bucket soon, and then realize you have 20 more years to live. Like I think
yeah.
about that sometime too. And I don't know. In my opinion, sometimes I'm like, life is too long, but also I want to use it to the fullest at the same time. I don't know. My
Yeah.
depression works in very stupid ways, is what I've discovered.
I think we're in like I think millennials are in a weird predicament too, of like, yeah, we don't have stable things, and we're being told that we're spending our money frivolously, but like if we can't afford anything else, then why are we trying to run ourselves into the ground to like get something that keeps going out of our reach? Like, why don't we just use the money to enjoy life, because that's what we have
Mhm.
right now? Because,
Yeah.
yeah, there's because then you're watching your parents who are like, I'm not going to enjoy life until I'm like retired, or which is like 65, 70. And then you're older and you're like, well, I'm healthier now, or like, I feel like 30s, 40s, and is when your body starts being like, I'm sad, or like, take care of me better.
It's so
And you're like,
young. Yeah.
it was so crazy, because yeah, it is young, but then at the same time you're like, well, I'm not in my 20s anymore, of like, I can just do whatever and not have to stretch and do yoga, and I'm fine. And then now we're
Mhm.
like, oh, now you actually have to stretch, take care of yourself, eat healthy. Like, you can't just eat junk food all the time and
Mhm.
expect to like your body to be like, I'm a-okay.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like we were able to do that, or it was like easier to do earlier, and like we can't do all-nighters as much anymore and stuff, that things that like in a sense we took for granted, and then now we're like, okay, healthier lifestyle, but because of that, and because we couldn't even afford to do anything in our 20s, just trying to like make it and like make money, now we can be like, okay, now we want to travel, we want to do these things that especially now that people aren't having families as much, just because it's like not affordable. So you're
Mhm.
just like, well, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah. Like, I kinda miss the days when, women and females in animation were like, "I don't know if I can have a kid because the career is so consuming," and now it's like, "I don't know if I can afford a kid," you know?
Yeah, the reasoning has changed, which is insane. And it also sucks too, because you're just like, also America, or like the US, we all know that our healthcare system, it should be universal, but it's not. And it's like, the stuff I hear from my friends who do have kids, or even just you get a hospital bill when you give birth, which is insane.
Why like, even when you have insurance or, like, when you're
Yeah.
on, like, Cobra? What?
Yeah, even
That's
if you have insurance, you
startling.
still get billed, because having a baby apparently is so expensive to like, and you have overnights at the hospital and all this stuff, and it's just, oh my gosh, and that on top of like having to get all the uh like everything for your child, and then the toys, and you're just like, what? And then like
Yeah.
possible paternity leave. It's like we should be having it. But then yeah, I it's tough.
Yeah. Like, so most of my work this year has been non-union, so, like, I'm about to lose my insurance through the union, so
Oh.
I am pretty nervous about it, and, like, I may not have kids in the future, but my husband and I have talked about it, and we're thinking of trying next year, and so, like, now we're like, "Oh, no. We should have done it sooner," a little bit, and it
Oh
sucks
my
that, like,
gosh.
that's even a thought, like, "Oh shucks, we should have had a baby sooner," because like, the future just got a lot harder realizing
Yeah.
we're gonna lose our insurance, you know?
Yeah. Is your husband in animation or is he
He is, unfortunately. I don't marry for the jobs my spouse has, but dang, part of me wishes I did. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he's a CG modeler. He works well, he doesn't work anywhere right now. He's in between too. Or
Mhm.
what are they calling it? Like a omega hiatus, I think is what Alex Keaton has said.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, on your podcast. It's a prep I listened
Oh.
to their
I
her
was laughing
interview.
so much with her, so I like
It's such
half
a
the
good
stuff.
episode. Everyone go listen to that episode.
Oh my gosh. I had to like keep when I was editing the episode, I kept having to pull down the volume because it would be like we're talking and then our laugh like gets so high and
That's
loud.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that
It's
was a good
such a
one.
lovely episode. I love it so much, and she's amazing, so,
She is.
yeah.
Yeah. We love you, Alex.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's go into your podcasts.
Okay.
How is it when you're working? Is it hard to handle your podcast? Do you have time to manage it or
It is really hard, and it was a little easier when I was in production because then I could just ask all the women that I was working with to come on the podcast, and I got to learn more about my coworkers, which was really cool, but in going, because like, a lot of the writing jobs now are freelance, so I don't get to really interact with the crew, and even
Mm,
becoming a staff writer, it got a little harder, but mostly because I didn't wanna get fired, and I was like, "I gotta put everything into this," so I kinda just pushed everyone away to try to do my best, which it was silly, but I was like, "I gotta
we've
do
done
this.
it.
This is my
We've all
dream."
done it. Yeah.
Yeah, but now, a few years into it, I'm, like, a lot more chill about it, but yeah, most of my jobs have been freelance, so I don't really get to see the crew. I get to see, like, my story editor boss and maybe the script coordinator, so, um
Mm,
but yeah, when you're working, it's really tough, and I feel like it gives me a lot of inspiration and motivation to keep going though, because then you get to hear about how everyone deals with the same issues that you're going through, or like you might
mhm,
hear about it before you go through it, like years later. And so I really love going back to like old episodes and listening to them. Like, not only do I hear how much I've grown, like I
mm.
also get, this capsule of a conversation I had with like a friend or like someone I admired. Um, and I'm just so grateful that I had the guts to make a podcast, because like, especially when I first started it in 2015, like I had my first paid job in animation, and I was like, who wants to listen to a podcast by a production coordinator? That's what I told myself. Like, production people,
Mhm.
amazing. There's so many amazing people in production. Some who want to stay there and some who want to be creative. So, um, yeah, where was I going with this? I'm sorry. And yeah, so it's hard, I guess is what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But, well, how about you? Is it hard for you?
Um, well, currently, a l I guess a little bit. I mean, I don't have a full-time job right now, but I have, small projects I'm working on, so it is starting to be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to do the podcast, I have to set up the interviews, I have to, like, you know, do all these things, and then I have this other project that I have to focus on too." So it's and then I'm like, "Well, what's this gonna be like when I have a full-time job?"
Mhm. Yeah. My posting schedule has really, struggled over the years. Like, it's all over the place. Like maybe for a month I'll be consistent, and then like 6 months later you get one, and then 3 months
Mm,
later you get two. Like, so I've kind of accepted over the years that I'm not going to be like, I don't call myself a podcaster because like it's not consistent. I'm not trying to make money off of it. It's really just there for community service, you know? Because
yeah.
like we kind of like talk about things that are less pretty in the industry. Because like when I was coming up, I was listening to all these animation podcasts and they were so great and I'm so grateful for them, but they had a lack of, you know, female representation in there. So like, and the same thing like in college in my like history of animation class, they had like one or two women in there and then like 20
Mm,
men. And so I was
yeah.
like, okay, well, I want to hear about, you know, women and non-binary folk actually making it happen. At the time that I started the show, I did not know about non-binary people.
Hmm.
I didn't understand non-binary, trans, queer stuff like growing up in kind of a homophobic area, I would say.
Hmm.
like I didn't understand it. You know, I didn't have any representation of what that meant or anything. So coming out here and like making friends, I've learned a lot in educating myself as well. So that's why we like, because it used to be called Ink and Paint Girls, like off of a cheeky comment in
Mm,
like a newspaper clipping, like in the 60s or 70s about the ink and paint department because it was all women. So I thought it was cute. And it was cute for a while until I was like, you know what? And I've always felt like a sham calling it that because I never really felt like a woman. And in learning about non binary people, I
mm,
was like, oh my God, like, I think I'm non binary. And, you know, it's yeah, so I changed it and widened the scope to non-binary people.
that's
And I would
amazing.
completely interview trans people as well. Like we actually interviewed a white guy last year and did this cheeky thing where it
Oh.
was like a token man with talent, and we do one a year now. And like I think it's hilarious. So we
Oh
might
my
keep that
gosh.
going. But yeah, like there's so many people that don't get highlighted, you know, in these podcasts that are
Hmm.
bigger. Like there's a lot of big animation podcasts and shows and stuff, and yeah, it just you keep seeing the same people on all of them, and they
Hmm.
have something to say, sure, but I want more perspectives, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like that was part of why I created my podcast too. It was like inspiring to kind of be like, uh, and we know V, so V was also an inspiration to be like, wow, there should be more people interviewing more of the industry that isn't just the most popular people that are like
Mhm.
highlighted. So and like you said, because a lot of them are male,
Yeah.
and yeah, I also just like I think what you said about how you originally 2015 version called it Ink and Paint Girls, but through like education and talking to people, you were and even just learning about yourself, just getting that new perspective, you were able to, because I think there's a tendency for some people to be like, well, I need to double down, that's just what this is, I shouldn't change it because that's what the audience or whatever reason they have, they think that they're so resistant to change or feel like the integrity stays with what the original idea is. And I think it's awesome that you shifted and were like, you know what, this can change this, like, yeah, it doesn't need to be ink and paint girls anymore, this is for folks. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. I sat on it for a couple months thinking about it, and when I did it, it just felt better. Like, it felt more in line with what I wanted to make and put out into the world, and it opened up to the people that I really wanted to talk to as well, you know?
Oh, that's great. Well, how did you? Okay, so you created this when you were a production coordinator,
Mhm.
and it was just a way for you to start seeing and talk. You're like, I want to see the representation that I don't see out there, which I think is amazing. Like the fact that you had this, like, you made the content that you wanted to see out there,
Mhm.
and which is such an amazing, you know, I feel like a lot of people are just like, I wish I saw that more, but they don't know a way to make it happen, and then you made it happen.
Yeah.
Um, and when did you start working with women in animation?
It was
Um,
about, I feel like I'd been doing the podcast for maybe about 3 or 4 years, and, like,
mhm.
someone had reached out to have, like, lunch, which sounds so Hollywood. And so I came just thinking I was gonna meet with one person, ended up meeting with 4 people, and they were, like, board members and
Oh
was
my
asking me
gosh.
about the podcast, and it was pretty incredible opportunity because they were amazing women, and like we still keep in touch. One of them had went into she had become a manager, and she was my manager for a while. She went back to development, and it's Jenna, Jenna, like she's so
Oh
great, like,
my gosh. Oh
yeah.
yeah,
So it
love
was
Jenna.
I was so excited to work with her, and it was really cool that, like, when we first met, it was, that lunch,
Mhm.
um so yeah, that started everything, and I had gotten talking to Tracy Miller Zarnecki, who writes some of the art of books for animated movies. It included, like, one of my favorites, How to Train Your Dragon. She did the art of book for that, and I'm just
Ooh.
like, "Oh my god, I get to talk to this person," and, like, I have her email, and I can email her and call her anytime I really want, though I don't, but I could, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, she heads the legacy part of WIA, and we kind of see the podcast as, I've always said it's like an archive, because one day it will be the history of women in animation. So I kind of see it as just collecting all these stories. And I hope that people that come on the podcast, like, years later, listen to it and see how much they've grown. But also that,
Mm,
because there's been a few people and I have the same mindset. It's like, who wants to hear from me? And so, like, kind of going through that, I feel like, and this is my perspective, I feel like they get some confidence out of it, and
mhm.
they see, like, it just reaffirms what they probably already believe but haven't accepted yet. I'm thinking of, like, one person in specifically. I hope everyone gets this out of it, ultimately, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I feel like I'm collecting history in the making.
Mhm. Um, what have you taken away from this experience and like interviewing and highlighting so many women, non-binary, and people of color in the industry?
Oh wait, what was the first part of it?
It's like,
So
what have you taken away from this experience? Just interviewing all these people.
right. That there's no right way to do it. There's so many ways to achieve your dreams, to break in and to keep going, and that, like, everyone hits rough patches, and you just keep going. Like, sure,
Mhm.
sometimes there's pivots, sometimes there's detours, but, like, if you know what you want and you keep going for it, like, it's bound to happen. And, like,
Yeah.
we can't find a common thread through a lot of the interviews is, like, you are not your job. Like, your self-worth can't be tied to your work. And I feel like for me that's really hard. Cuz,
Mhm.
like, I feel like if I'm not being productive, or if I don't have a job, like if I roll off a show, I'm like, "Oh no, I'm unemployed and I'm never going to work again. Like, am I even a writer anymore?" But, like, the thing is, like, even if you're not working, you are still, like, if I'm not writing on a show, I'm still a writer.
Yeah.
And, like, development and show creation, like, you do all that work. We do, like, most of the work ahead of time, go pitch, and hopefully you get into development. So technically I'm always a writer, right? my,
Mhm.
my brain says I'm not, but, like, that's a struggle for another day. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, you are still the thing you love to do, with or without money coming in. So
Mhm.
does that answer your question? Were you looking for a
Yeah.
different answer?
I mean, I think it went into a different answer, but
Mm,
it's still that's like much the same. And like knowing that's not your job, I think is a huge one. Because that's a lesson I feel that we all learned one hard way or the other. how it's because I feel like I've been coming up with that
Oh,
too the
you
more I talk with
paused.
people, where I feel and it's a hard line because this is our passion. This is something we're very passionate about. It's not a typical job. Um, but ultimately, at the end of the day, all it is a job. Like, you are um, working for somebody, you're trying to meet a deadline, you're trying to like create for someone else's vision, and it's not worth killing yourself for. Um, which, again, I feel that studios have taken advantage of us for that, being like, well, but this is like, you should be thankful that you get to draw, or, be creative every day. And obviously we learn such amazing skills from it. Like, you get to learn how to streamline your writing, you get to learn how to, like, in a production, do storyboards or animate, and learn from your colleagues and your friends, and you make like-minded friends, or or unlikely friends. And but yeah, it's a job.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard separating that out sometimes, but
It totally is. One thing, I forget who said this. It wasn't on my podcast, it was on someone else's. And I haven't implemented it yet, but I think about it like every day since I heard it, is like, like as creatives, we have to kind of like brand ourselves without branding ourselves. And someone was like, yeah, I'm thinking of myself as my own creative director. And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Because, all these celebrities and, like, people in, like, higher up in Hollywood, right? They have a whole team pushing them out into the world, right?
yeah.
Even, like, the superstars in animation, they have agents, they have publicists, they have a whole team in some aspects. Like, I'm sure not everybody, but, like, if, they have a movie coming out, they definitely do, you know?
Hmm.
And, there I feel like it's worth, thinking about yourself in, like, an objective way. Because, like, I know one thing that holds me back a lot is subjectivity of myself. I'm like, "No one expects that from me, so I can't do that." But, like, no one cares about me, like, no one is thinking about me, and, like, I could go and do anything I wanted as long as it didn't hurt anyone, right? But,
Yeah.
like, if you look at yourself as you are the creative director of your own path, then it's like, "Oh, you're very good at this. Maybe this is something that you could do for the meantime while you look for your next job." So, like,
Mm.
yeah, there's something in it. Haven't done it myself, but I will report back later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll circle back to it. We'll have another
Yeah.
interview. Um, I actually, there was something you said that I wanted to go back on, and I hate when you just like forget it.
Totally. I do this all the
Oh,
time.
I just remembered. So, do you run the podcast yourself, or do you have a team, like anyone else helping out?
It's pretty much just me. Over the years, I've I want someone to help me with,
Hmm.
but it's mostly me. I do have a couple editors. Like when they have time, they'll take on like editing duties because like I love having the conversations. Like setting them up and editing them is like the like the least of my favorite. but um, but yeah, so May Murphy edits some of the episodes, and so does Daniel Wichorek. And it really is just like I have a little bit of money from Wea to kind of give them a stipend, which is like so gracious. And so like I get to pay them something. It's definitely not enough, because editing is a lot of work. But
Hmm.
luckily, kind of luckily, interview podcasts are way easier than other types, because it's pretty straight ahead.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're very consistent in helping me. Some like I probably edit still like half or a little less than half of the episodes.
Mm.
And in the past couple years, Kira Rodriguez has been co-hosting some episodes or hosting on her own. I met her through Rise Up Animation. I was a
Oh,
mentor with
nice.
them, and her and Nate Carvalho did this like Saturday Ask Me Anythings with professionals. So like they asked me on once and I was like, oh my gosh, they like ask really good questions. And I feel like I've been in the industry for about 10 years now and I feel like some of my questions are getting stale. And I'm like, I'm not
Mm.
asking like because like my target audience is about junior in college to like a couple years working in the industry. That could be like a short amount of time or like a long amount of time, depending on, the listener's journey. But I feel like the questions that I really want to know now are different. But
Mhm.
so I'm kind of struggling with that at the moment. But they're earlier in their career, so I feel like they ask better questions than I do. So it's been really great to have them. Um, but I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, should I evolve the podcast because of my
Yeah.
personal interests, or should I like try to pass on the podcast to someone else who is closer to the area of the audience? You know what I mean? And I'm
Mm.
probably overthinking it, to be honest.
Mhm.
But yeah, some of the thoughts that go through my head about it.
It's still good to think. I think it's like great that you're even considering it. Like you said, uh, I you're just like, I'm thinking about what's best for this podcast, and I'm trying to think about what the evolution is going to be. And I think that's really like, I think those are great things to think about. Anyway, but talking about evolving, I think you evolved by starting your second podcast, The Story Reaper.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about it? How did that start?
So I was mentoring with Wea, and I've done it for a couple years now. But my last cohort, they kept asking me after the circle wrapped about podcasts. I was like, "Do you guys want to make one?" And they're like, "Yes." And I definitely didn't expect how hard this was gonna be. Making like an anthology storytelling podcast narrative, like it's much harder to edit than like an interview podcast. You got sound effects, you got music,
Mm.
you got all this stuff, and the group is incredible. Like our director Candace Hoodert, they like cast all of these characters and directed them on like online over the web, and we have so many amazing actors, and like the writers like really nailed their stories. It's been really incredible. So basically Story Reaper, like I should describe what this is.
Yeah.
It's a family friendly horror fantasy anthology, and basically every episode is a different story. They're not connected except for the story reaper and their apprentice, who intros the story and outros the story. So they go around the world looking for stories and collecting them. And so you kind of get a little bit like a hint of their own story while they're like collecting these individual stories. And like we have like, I'm gonna cry. Like,
Oh no.
I'm so proud of the writers, and like they really wanted to do something spooky. I'm not really even sure why, but most of their pitches were spooky. So I was like, okay, we'll lean into the horror a little bit here. And also in why like kids content, you don't really see a lot of horror. And like
Hmm.
they're pretty tame stories, except for a few that get kind of dark and you're like, whoa. Um, but yeah, we have one episode out so far, Splat, written by Chris Burke and Anise Overton. It's really fun, and we'll have more. We wanted to release every other week, but it's going to be every month because it's been a really it's been a very heavy
Yeah.
project that we didn't
How
expect. Yeah.
many episodes are going to be released?
About 8. 8,
Okay.
like not about 8. It's going to be 8.
You never know. You could be listening to it later and you're like, oh, actually, this could be split into two episodes or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah.
But that's super exciting. And I love that it's such a collaborative process with your mentees. So, what a cool way to get them to not only get their story out, but to show them a new skill as well.
Yeah, and, like, none of them have, like, any writing credits, and, like, one thing we talked about in the circle, and this is, like, such a bummer thing, like, no one wants to read your writing samples, which, like, I endure as well, so I was just trying to be real. I hope I didn't, like, kill anyone's, like, vibe, but, like, it's good to have your samples, obviously, but, like, I think writing for podcasts is really fun, and, like, someone could listen to it on their commute to work. Not that everyone has commutes anymore, but, like, now you have 2 ways of getting someone to read your writing.
Hmm.
So that was the thought process behind just, like, working with a group of very awesome people.
Yeah. Ooh, love it. Um, well, is there anything recently or in the past couple years that has helped you thrive and feel passionate and reinvigorated?
Hmm. I feel like, I mean, the pandemic was so rough, you know.
Hmm.
I think, you know, I had a project in development and like I finally felt like I had found a flow state when I was working on it, and it has to do with music. So I've been like making playlists for like every project that I'm like writing or developing, and like I don't know. I have this obsessive thing where I can listen to like one song for like 12 hours and not be sick of it.
Hmm.
It's kind of nuts. So like my Spotify rap this year is like really weird. um but anyway, so I've been making playlists for all the projects, and that's been, I don't know, it really helps me like really get into the world and into the themes that I'm writing about, and that's been really fun. And I think, being able to work on something and lose myself in it has been like just the greatest. And I can't achieve it all the time, but when I
Hmm.
can, it's just like uh just feeling the like affirmation that like I am doing what I'm meant to do, And like that's
Oh,
just like the
yeah.
best feeling. And so I'm in the middle of reading this book by Rick Rubin, like the creativity book. I forgot
Oh,
the name.
yeah. I've been
And
meaning
like
to read it.
I really like it. I understand that like it's definitely a privileged perspective in some areas. You're like, okay. But there was this one quote in there. It was something about, let's see if I have the book. Okay, well, it was something about like, it's not always just about being creative. It's setting up your environment to be able to be creative when you want to. And I thought that was really cool.
Mm,
And I can be very messy. So like I'm like,
yeah.
how do I make it easy for me to go into flow state? And, clean my desk probably, have a blanket nearby cuz it's getting cold, you know
Hmm.
just simple things like that. So, not just being like, I got to be productive right now. It's like, how can I be the most comfortable to be creative? And it's not about productivity, So like reading I find to be a creative act now too, because it, getting to be in other people's worlds and getting to see the creative decisions they made, or like even fall beyond critiquing their work and actually fall into the story and forget that you're reading, this is just a place that exists and these are characters living their life. And I think it's so cool to be able to like shut down my writer brain and just
Hmm.
live another life. And I think that's the best thing about writing, in creating, is that in life you make these decisions and you go down a path, and sure you can pivot, but then that all of a sudden becomes your path. And like reading and being in these worlds, you get to live all these other lives.
Yeah. Mm. In the vein of funsies, is there a random animal fact you can tell me?
So red pandas are sleepy little guys, and they live in this forest in Nepal, and they actually have forest guardians who like check in on them because they're endangered species, and they just make sure they're all like good. Do you need a cup of water? You need some food? Like they just take care of them, and it's like the sweetest thing. And I'm like, should I move to Nepal and be a forest guardian, or should I make a show about
Oh,
it? Like I don't know yet. Like how
yeah.
incredible is that? It's like the sweetest.
That is super sweet. I really love learning that. That's beautiful. They're just like, "Hi, just checking in, making sure you guys are okay. Do you have
Yeah.
everything you need? All right, cool. Like,
That's how I
take your
picture
nap."
the conversation going. Yeah.
They like have a little blanket. They're like, "Are you cool? Do you need this?
There
Anybody?"
you
Like looking
go.
around. They're all just
Yeah.
like passed out. They're like, "Okay, everybody's
Ugh,
good."
red pandas are the cutest. There was one Christmas, like all my gifts were like little tiny paintings of red pandas. Like,
Oh
and
my
at the end
gosh.
of like everyone opened up their gifts and everyone's holding like little paintings of red pandas. They're like, you really went through a phase this year. I'm like, this isn't a phase. This is for life.
Oh, so cute. Um, well, okay. So as part of the show, I'd like to pull out a tarot card for the episode
Oh yes,
because who
please.
knows?
I just got into tarot last year. I'm still such a baby at it, but I'm like obsessed.
Oh, it's so fun. Um, but yes, so maybe you'll need to hear it. Maybe you'll need it for like a future, I don't know, just keep it in your back pocket.
Yes.
Um yeah, tarot is so, yeah, I'll say addicting a little bit. Like
Hmm.
you can get really, really into it. But I'm glad where I've gone with my journey into it. Um, and then it's like nice when you can like actually help other people. I think that one's that's always fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna be shuffling and then you just tell me when to stop and we'll see what card pops out on
Okay.
top.
Stop.
Ooh. So we have the Four of Pentacles.
Hmm.
If you
That
want to
illustration
describe
is
it for
really
me.
cool. Uh, okay, so this person is adorned with white polyester and gold and armor, and they're holding up a golden thing, and they have like fabric swaying in the wind in a physic way that doesn't make sense. But it looks like they're in a gladiator kind of arena as well,
Uh huh.
and they have a purple shadow on the brick floor.
Nice.
Is that what you meant?
All
Like
right.
literal? Describe
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
How do you feel about it?
Because I don't
Like,
know
what
what
feeling do
Four
you
of
get?
Pentacles. I always have to like Google what the meaning of all the cards right after I pull them. So I mean, lifting up a golden thing that's also adorning their body, like because it looked like they're probably from the same like QSV like collection, QVC collection, not QSV. So let's see. You have what you need, so embrace it and hold it up for everyone to see.
Ooh.
So what's the
Uh,
actual meaning though?
so the description says true power does not come from material possessions, but from the values locked in our heart. And um, like you said, because I like hearing what people's interpretations are, or like, when you describe the card, it's different what you see versus what I see. And obviously through the computer screen, it's going to be a little different too.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting that you said she looked like in battle or gladiator-esque, when like from what I can, the details that I can see, she is dancing in a courtyard or like in a stadium, with her pentacles. The fact that you said she has everything she needs and so she's like kind of showing it off, I think is super relevant to this reading. um it does feel like you have all your pieces, or especially with like how many projects that you do, that you have so many interests, and not like you don't have your eggs all in one basket. You have so many things you're working on that I think create fulfillment, that you are able to show it off and be like, hey, look at this. Look at these projects I'm working on. Look at everything I'm doing. And yeah, I think it's a good one. Typically the what is it? The description to me, um I guess the description does come into play because your values, everything that you've talked about on this podcast, does show that you want like the best for not only yourself but for everybody, where you made ink and paint folks to be uplifting for people who don't usually get a voice out there, and you also evolved it from not being girls but to being folks and to be inclusive, because then you're like, that's another voice that doesn't have as much power out there. So I really see this woman dancing. Actually, it looks like you're lifting up So, yeah, continue being a champion of values and for like other people's voices, because then you're also helping mentees get a voice. So, I think you're doing great things.
Oh, thanks. I love that rating way better than my very objective one. Like,
It
there's a
takes it
shadow
takes
on the
time.
floor.
I mean, I did just ask for like a literal description. So I wasn't like,
Yeah.
read this for me. What? Like, yeah. Anyway, um, well, thank you so much, Cassie, for being here and talking with me. Is there anything you want to promote about yourself? And is there somewhere you want people to find you?
Well, you can find me at my website, casassy.com. CASSY.com. And I'm on social media primarily. And you know what? I don't post on Instagram that much. I'm going to. I've made it a point within the next month to post at least one comic. So, Cassie Soliday on Instagram. I'm still on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. And I'm not sure where else I'll like I'm kind of waiting to see what the next social media place where like at least most of the animation community goes to.
Hmm.
I'm just waiting 'cause I'm like,
Yeah.
it's I don't know, exhausting to keep up with everyone. But I
Yeah.
want to know all the cool things everyone's doing at the same time. Maybe I
Oh
just
my
sign up for
God.
all of them. Anyway,
You
it'll
know,
probably be Cassie Soliday, unless it's there's like someone in Texas who's slightly younger and if she gets the handle first, then I'll probably be Sassy Comics. One or the other.
yeah. I was gonna say, what if you're the one that makes the like not only do you make the animation streaming channel, but then the global animation streaming channel, but then you connect that to make the animation platform that we all congregate at.
Oh my
Cassie.
god. I wish I was smart enough or had the resources. Because it's not always about being smart, it's about having resources.
It's true. The
um,
resources is important,
I would
but you're
love
getting
that.
there.
Yeah. One day someone would be like, you have exactly what we're looking for. Just enough experience, just enough talent, just enough smarts, and just enough humility. And I look forward to it.
Is there anything else in terms of where people can find your work or
Oh, just on that website,
okay,
casassy.com. And
sounds good.
yeah.
Yay.
Thank you for
Well,
having me on the podcast. This has been really fun. I was very nervous, so probably rambled a bit. But thanks
nah,
for
you did
enduring.
great. Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you so much for being here. I was so happy to have you on my podcast. So, just we got to keep lifting each other up. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I'm excited for you to come on my podcast too. So really thrilled and excited for that.
Yes, I know. Sadly, we are at the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow and subscribe. You can also follow Tired and Thriving on Instagram at Tired and Thriving, all one word. You can email if you want to reach out, give feedback, or let me know maybe how you've been uniquely thriving at tiredandthriving@gmail.com. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a thriving week. See you next time.